At 50 years old, Sharon's husband left her. They had been together for 30 years, through thick and thin, raised a wonderful daughter, and suddenly, he was gone. "I'm sorry," he said, "but I have a new family now." Yes, the new woman was younger, and she had just given birth to a baby boy they named Matthew. Sharon had always taken care of herself, regular visits to the salon, a refreshed wardrobe, and makeup to keep her looking good for her beloved husband. She even loved to cook when there was someone to cook for. But now she was alone. The crushing weight of depression took over her life. She didn't want to wake up in the morning, didn't want to eat, speak, or even step outside. She didn't want to live. Her daughter, Emily, left her own family in another city and came to help. But there was little she could do. Sharon would spend days lying in bed, facing the wall, refusing therapy, refusing food, refusing life. Emily tried everything, reminding her mother that life was still beautiful, that there were new opportunities for travel and experiences, things beyond cooking meatloaf and mashed potatoes for her husband. But Sharon wouldn't listen. Her life, as she saw it, was over. Sharon and Emily lived in a quiet suburb of Portland, Oregon. The day came for Emily to return to her own family. She cleaned her mother's apartment, hung fresh curtains, filled the fridge with groceries, and even cooked a pot of chicken soup. But as she waited for the taxi to take her to the station, a deep sense of anxiety gnawed at her. How could she leave her mother in such a state? Then she spotted a cat under a nearby lilac bush. He was a large, scruffy gray tabby with patches of missing fur, clearly weathered by life. Despite his appearance, the cat seemed completely content, basking in the warm sun and smelling the lilacs. Emily suddenly knew what she had to do. The next morning, Sharon woke up to unfamiliar sounds. It wasn't a dream. There was definitely a cat in her apartment, yowling loudly. Her husband had been allergic, so they had never had pets, but now the cat's deep, insistent meowing was filling the silence. She got out of bed, walked to the kitchen, and there he was, a big, demanding tabby sitting on the floor, glaring at her as if to say, "I didn't ask to be brought here, but since you've taken me in, you'd better feed me." Sharon didn't want a cat. He wouldn't let her wallow in her misery in peace. She opened the front door, intending to shoo him out, but he stubbornly refused to leave, fixated on the pot of soup on the stove. She couldn't bring herself to kick him out, so she gave him half the pot of soup. Finally, blessed silence. She lined a box with newspapers and pointed to it. "There, that's your bathroom," she said, retreating back to her sadness. The next day, the cat's yowling returned, piercing through her sorrow once again. She got up, fed him more soup, poured him some milk, and returned to her bed. On the third day, Sharon trudged to the kitchen under the weight of those now familiar cries. But something had changed. As she stood there, staring at the cat demanding his breakfast, she began to laugh. Tears streamed down her face, but she laughed. She laughed so hard that she couldn't stop, even as the cat continued to meow at her for food. It felt like a breakdown, but also a release. The heaviness in her chest began to lift, replaced by a strange sense of relief. She fed the cat the last of the bread soaked in milk and decided to take a shower. Maybe she wasn't done with life after all. The soup was gone, and so was the milk. Sharon found herself getting dressed, fixing her hair, and heading out to the store. Stepping outside, she was struck by how beautiful the world still was. Birds singing, lilacs blooming, the warmth of the sun on her face. And then she realized she wasn't alone anymore. She had someone to care for, even if that someone was just a scruffy old tabby cat with torn ears and a bass voice. The cat, whom she named Max, quickly settled in. His once scraggly fur grew soft and thick, and he stopped yowling so much, knowing that his food dish would be filled on time. Maybe, Sharon thought, he didn't need to drag anyone out of their misery anymore. maybe his job was done. Sharon, too, found herself in a better place. She decided to take Max to the vet for a checkup. It had been years since she'd been in a vet's office, and she felt nervous. She wasn't even sure Max had ever seen a vet before. As she entered the small clinic, she was greeted by the warm smile of Dr. Mark, a kind-eyed, slightly graying man who seemed to instantly put her at ease. He listened to her concerns about Max, gently examined the cat, and offered advice on how to best care for him. But what surprised Sharon most was how easy it was to talk to Dr. Mark. They chatted not only about Max, but about life, loss, and recovery. There was a shared understanding between them, as Dr. Mark had lost his wife a few years ago. When the appointment was over, Sharon thanked him and prepared to leave. Dr. Mark smiled and said, "If you ever need anything, advice for Max, or just someone to talk to, feel free to call or stop by." That evening, Sharon found herself thinking not just about the cat, but about Dr. Mark. She smiled to herself as she sipped her tea. Life, it seemed, had its own way of bringing unexpected blessings, even in the smallest moments. Perhaps, she thought, our pets understand us better than we realize. Maybe they save us in their own way, refusing to let us sink too far into despair, reminding us that life still has meaning, even if that meaning is as simple as caring for a stray cat. So, do you have a pet who's helped you through tough times?